Hello?
Hi, Sean.
Yes.
Rowan from Silver Tiger Media. How are you?
What's up, Rowan? How are you?
Very good. It's a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks very much for your time.
Awesome. My pleasure.
Congratulations on the success of the album. What was your vision for the album when you originally released it?
Oh, God. I'm trying to think. So I think that like the big thing was, so we worked on the album for sort of an inordinate amount of time, and there were there were so many steps, I remember, because we were trying to figure out how a band records their own record and makes it sound competitive enough to maybe get the attention of Epitaph Records or get our asses on Warped Tour like any punk band that has any future in the States does. You know what I mean? Like,
sure. Yeah.
So I think really that our dream was like, oh wow, well yeah, if we could get the attention of Epitaph or get on Warped Tour, this is what we want to do with this. And we were working with a couple producers who were not technically producers then; they were more like college students, but they were friends of ours from school and other local bands. And they were guys that had that were kind of early on the uptake of recording, home recording, affordable like versions of. It wasn't even Pro Tools yet at that point. We recorded on like Cakewalk and like Avid something or other. You know what I mean? Like
sure. Yep.
And I remember we actually recorded the whole record. We knew we had some pretty cool songs. They were like stuff we had written over our 4 years in high school together, and we had played enough live that we kind of knew which ones were sort of crowd tested. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So we probably sifted through. There were probably 40 or 50 songs that we had the luxury of knowing which ones were the favorites, and so we kind of gravitated toward those, and so we knew we had a pretty cool album on our hands if we could just get it recorded right. And I remember we pretty much did the whole album, and we thought we had some pretty magical takes on some of the stuff. And then one of us read an article about how nothing was making an impact these days unless it's like recorded to a click and basically beat detectived was the term that they used, and we were like, like we didn't record this to a click. So we went to the guys that we were recording with, and we were like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And they're like, well, I think that like the technology exists to be able to like shift it after the fact. And so we did this big old like time-consuming thing of like trying to put the songs on a click and make them make the tempo of them uniform. And it was like a disaster, and it took forever. It didn't even sound that good across the board. And we hired some guy, and hired him on spec because we didn't have any money. But we were like, hey, if we get fined with this, like we'll pay you. And he ended up going to jail halfway through doing this for us.
Oh, great.
And so it was like this big shady operation in which we were just trying to be professional enough to like, do these songs some justice so that maybe they could reach some ears. You know what I mean? But in the end, we ended up finishing the record. Some of it is to click, and some of it is not, and some of it is like halfway. And it was just like, well, we just got to trust our ears, and like if it sounds good, it sounds good, and it doesn't matter if it's
brilliant. Oh, what a great insight! Thank you very much. I won't bore your fans with another question about the reason for the name change, but could I ask why you decided upon, or how you decided upon the Matches?
Why we decided to name the band that?
Yeah.
So we were before that we were called The Locals, and we were a local band, and we thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
But there was another band called The Locals, which luckily enough contacted us, and at the time we had built up a bit of not to overuse the word, but local steam. And so we were like, oh no, we could lose everything if we changed our band name. But we sort of realized that it's, if we wanted to like be a national act or even get to go overseas, this kind of thing, the locals probably kind of like loses its hilarity sort of to some degree. So anyway, we ended up changing our name, and we the matches was sort of just like a random like, oh, that's not taken. We wanted to keep the something format.
Okay.
So we named the first album Yvonne Dahl Killed the Locals. Yvonne Dahl was the singer of the other band called the Locals. They were from Chicago, and her name was on the cease and desist, and it was spelled differently. So we didn't know if there would be like legal repercussions or anything. So we just changed the spelling of her name and made it phonetic, and she kind of sounded even more like a villain that way.
Indeed. And luckily we all worked it out too, which was good.
Yeah.
Superman, it's such a killer track, but I've got to ask why it was removed from the Epitaph re-release.
Hey, Matt, why did we remove Superman? I think we had released Superman, like, that was maybe I think it was like the first song that we finished, and it was also the one that we had played the longest, and we had put it on a few EPs in the Bay Area before we, did the album. It was on a few different recordings. It was kind of the one that people were like, put that out again, you know what I mean? And we were when Epitaph came around and wanted us to put out the record again, we were like, okay, you know what? We've released Superman. It's been on 3 different releases. I think that, to make this one different, let's do like 2 more songs that weren't on the original, and let's cut 1 or 2, and that happened to be, the one, just because how many we'd already put out, how many times we've already put it out,
Absolutely. I have to ask why Scratched Out was renamed to track 11.
I think we couldn't decide on a proper name for that, and so it was always, how songs have before they are officially named, there's always working titles. That one had so many working titles. I remember we called it Abraham Song for a minute because a friend of ours named Renee, like, somehow got to be called Abraham, and he played keyboards on the song, so for a minute we called it Abraham Song, and then when we came up with the track sequence, we called it track 11, and then when we couldn't decide on a name, I think I jokingly scribbled it out on the track sequence, and then it started being called Scratched Out, and then, we left it scribbled out on the album. I think the fans sort of went with that version of the name mostly.
Fantastic.
It has now got a new name, which is the Meow Song. I don't know if you've heard about this, but our crowds in America increasingly took over the chorus of the song, which is just a bit of a hum. Yeah. And the hum is like sort of difficult for a crowd of people to reproduce live. Yeah. So the crowd has taken to meowing the melody. And for the longest time we were like, come on, let us do this song, stop meowing. But at some point we just had to embrace it. And so now the meowing happens all the time.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know.
Brilliant. Now, you wrote Aaron Smith as an acoustic track. How hard was it to transfer all of that emotion to the album version?
It was definitely, the original was really different, actually. I don't know. That's sort of the fun of being in a band is that you get to kind of take the talents of your other band members and kind of utilize their talents in a way that a composer might to give the song new depth, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think that it still held the same emotion for you?
I think so. I mean, it definitely. It's tricky because what holds a lot of emotion for me when I'm just like playing my guitar and like coming up with the melody or the lyrics of a song when I'm just like in my bedroom is very different to what kind of holds the energy of a crowd live. And I think a lot of the songs on that record, especially on our first record, were sort of, there are earlier versions that maybe weren't as energetic or like crowd inclusive, but we sort of figured out that like, oh, okay, if we make sort of obvious backup vocal parts that John and Justin sing between my vocals, or if we keep the tempos like, semi-blistering, then like these go over really well live. And I think at the time a lot of the audience were kind of teenagers and early teenagers at that, kind of going to their first shows. And there's something crazy when you like step into a room and everyone's just like crowd surfing and in a circle pit, and you're like, your eyes just widen and you're like, this is not what I expected. And so, we were definitely like playing to the scene. And I think as the matches progressed, we started experimenting with other ways of getting people's attention. The first record, if there was a gimmick, it was like play loud, play fast.
And you pulled it off so beautifully too. Speaking of younger audiences, look, I've got to tell you, I caught my 3-year-old son dancing recently to Chain Me Free. He just loves it, can't get enough of it. Are you noticing that there's a new generation of fans for you?
Yeah, actually, at these reunion shows, I was sort of surprised at how many people were like were telling me that they were seeing us for the first time.
Wow.
And it really did feel like we had made more fans, in the absence of the band. It's kind of cool, like you, especially in this day and age, you sort of feel like if you leave something alone on social media, or you leave something just alone that's a creative work for any period of time, that it's going to be completely lost, because there's so much pressure to like have constant contact and constant content, and so it was really neat to come back and see that it hadn't died and that it had even kind of metastasized to some degree. Like there was still a contingent of younger fans that had heard about it, maybe through older siblings, or just, I don't know how they would come across it, because it wasn't like, it's not like we were like being smashed as a radio band ever or anything. It was kind of like a find it through your friends sort of thing.
Absolutely. Metastasize is a beautiful turn of phrase to describe it. If you were to perform Aaron Smith, I've got a favour to ask. Can you please leave it till Melbourne next week?
Yeah. We'll play it. I think the plan is that we're doing the whole first record. This is what we did in the States, and it went over well. So if this ends up working in Australia, this is the plan, is that our first part of our set is the whole first record front to back, and then we come back out and then play a variety of different songs that will range from night to night after that, from our subsequent records. But I don't know if that doesn't work I mean, we kind of broke over here in Australia more on our second record, which was Decomposer. So I'm like kind of curious to see if people are stoked on hearing the new record, and we'll try it out in person tonight. I mean,
indeed,
the old record in its entirety, or if they're like, shouting out songs from the subsequent records in the first part of the set, and if they are, we might change it up. So we'll see.
Fantastic. You see, here we go. I was going to ask, do you have a favourite track from the original album to perform live?
Wait, what's that?
Do you have a favourite track to perform live?
Oh, favourite one. I mean, the coming out, the first part of the set is always so fun to see people kind of launched back into, when they may have seen us originally, or just the kind of the era in which they heard the music, since it does kind of it does have like I mean this with a positive connotation in this sense, but like a timestamp on it. It kind of throws people back immediately, and I can kind of see them sort of just mentally like kind of freak out in this like reminiscent state when we start playing, which is really cool. And so I think the beginning of the set has been my favorite so far, just because I get to see that night to night on people's faces, So like Dog-Eared Page, Audio Blood. Dog-Eared Page is so fun because I start the song with the vocal, and so we come out, and then I kind of hope that I'm in the right key, and anytime I walk near the mic, it's like, is this going to be the beginning of the song, or and then all of a sudden we just launch into it, and it kind of slingshots you in. So
and away it goes. Yeah, and look, Audio Blood, for me, to name but one, demonstrates your individual skills beautifully. Would you categorize yourselves to a particular genre?
I mean, I think that our initial intention was to be a punk band, and whatever sub genres that we like kind of entailed. It was pop punk or punk pop when we started. It was like very melody centric punk music, and then as we went on, we sort of like embraced a lot of other subgenres, and kind of like some of our tempos probably went outside of the realm of what was like currently considered punk music, into kind of more alternative, into more of a vague alternative genre sort of. And we even messed around with some like kind of Baroque instrumentation, and played around with some like weird folk elements. And I don't know, we were just sort of open to all things like indie alternatives. As long as, I don't know, I think it was always important to us that our shows retained like an energy and a live urgency. So there's some songs that we actually that we put on record that we actually never played live, just because we didn't feel like it fit what the crowd would want to experience in a live setting. Because I don't know, especially as we saw the music world sort of shifting to kind of like a more indie alternative, kind of almost like it got a little more introspective and shoegazy and that kind of thing, and we kind of felt like the strength of our live shows was really in the energy and the connection with the crowd. So we kind of kept that element, that ingredient present in all the stuff that we had played live. But we did some stuff like Salty Eyes and other songs that totally challenged our very genre as well. And I think that was kind of part of who we were as well. So.
Absolutely. Sean, I've got to tell you, I've got so many questions I wanted to ask you and still remain, fairly calm. I'm trying not to go all fanboy on you. But maybe I can grab you in Melbourne next week. But look, best of luck tonight in Perth. I hope Australia delivers up exactly what you guys deserve, which is an enormous response. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
We'll talk to you soon, mate. Have a good evening.
All right.